Welcome to No More Picky Eaters. Very important because, as a wise nutritionist once said, a healthy adult begins with a healthy child. So if we begin our life as a picky eater, that can follow into adulthood. And that's when real issues begin to creep up. So for those who don't know me, my name is Carolyn Nickel. I am a certified holistic nutritionist. And this is part one. If you join us next week, we will have Leanna Quanake talk about how to make our young people, even ourselves, more accountable, responsible, and organized. And she has an incredible background in social work and daycare management and working with people of all walks of life. So I know you'll find her information valuable. But let's get right into the session here, because whether you have children, whether you don't, whether you're a grandparent, an aunt, and uncle, or just a good neighbor, I know that you're going to find the information in this session extremely valuable. If you have questions as we go, please feel free to just put it in the chat, and I can answer it at the end. So one thing I think that most of us don't really think about is this fancy word called homeostasis. Homeostasis just means balance. It's the law that governs the human body. So your body knows all by itself how much vitamin E it needs and vitamin B and how much water and how high your blood pressure needs to be for that moment. It knows how much glucose to store. It knows when it needs to pull calcium, when it needs to give calcium. And it knows it has this like invisible checklist of nutrients, how much vitamin B and C and D and E and minerals, iron, calcium that it needs every day. So some nutrients your body can create itself through different chemical interactions, but most of the nutrients that we need comes from our food. So your body doesn't produce calcium. It for sure has a calcium reservoir when you're born, but it doesn't produce calcium. You have to give it calcium. It doesn't have vitamin E. You have to give it vitamin E. So these will not come through, unfortunately, although it is more than $1 billion, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It will not come through a vitamin bottle. You actually have to get it through. Does anybody know how you're going to get your nutrients? You can throw it in the chat. How am I going to get enough iron and enough calcium and enough vitamin B and E? How are we going to get that nutrient list filled up every day? Do we have any answers? Throw it in the chat if you can. If not, I will give it to you. Quiet crowd. It's going to come from our food. Okay, so we need to have the right amount, the right foods, variety of foods to get that nutrient list checked up. Now, when we are younger, we have a little bit of a reserve. We have a lot more buffer. But as we get older, we deplete that reserve. So even if you say, oh, you know, I used to always eat garbage and I never ate well, yada, yada, yada. But as you get older, it catches up with you because you just don't have the buffer room anymore. You don't have that reserve. So it's very important, though, that we're continuing to not just keep depleting that reserve, but building it even when we're younger so that we keep this good store as we're getting older. Because the reality is, once we cross 50, our body has less of an ability to pull nutrients out of food. So no matter how healthy you are, it's a natural part of the decomposing. You know, I hate to say that, but we're all dying really. But after 50, your body has less of an ability to take your nutrients out of food. So you're going to want a lot of storage of nutrients, not fat, not calories. And some vitamins are water soluble and they don't store well. Other ones are more oil-based, fatty soluble, and they do store well. So it's really important, though, that we definitely have a good amount of a wide variety of foods. And the best time to get this is in our early years, obviously throughout our life, but you don't want to start this in your 30s if you can. God's merciful and we can heal. But you definitely want to make a point to fill up that nutrient checklist every day. So what's on that nutrient checklist and how can we get it filled? Well, here's the reality is that despite what you might hear or read, a plant-based diet full of healthy fruits and vegetables will naturally fill up your nutrient checklist. That is correct, and you heard me clearly. You do not need meat, dairy, fish, eggs in your diet in order to fill up your nutrient checklist. I don't know if that was just like a news flash for some people, but as a Christian person, you know, I do believe that we were designed we were born in the Garden of Eden. So the reality is that everything in the Garden of Eden, and I know we are far cry from the Garden of Eden today, but there should be enough in plants to give us everything we need. In fact, what I'd like you to think about for those who think, no, you need the protein from meat. I want you to think about this. We talked about this in our last seminar. Think about the main sources of protein that people are having today. So if you can throw it in the chat, what are the main sources of protein, animal proteins that people are eating today? So there's like, you know, a good 4 or 5 that people are having. So fish is one of them. Anybody else want to pipe in or type it in? What other kind of protein sources are most people having today? Chicken, beef, yes, pork. Think about these animals for a minute. And I want you to realize something, that we eat them for protein, but how on earth did they get so much protein in them? We eat them for B12 and we eat them for iron. How on earth did they get so much iron and B12 in them? Because all they eat is plants. They don't eat other animals. So we get it secondhand. That doesn't make any sense. So let's just go and eat grass, right? So that's the reality, is that the animal products that we're eating, those animals were eating plants to get their checklist filled up. And so for us, that's all we need is plants, really. And not just fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, grains, as far as possible. But our children need to also be eating this way, a wide variety. And so the problem with children, and even as we get older, is that we sometimes like, you know, yeah, I eat vegetables, but I only like broccoli, or my child likes fruits, but only apples, or I can't get them to eat beans. There's no way. They'll eat regular potatoes, but never sweet potatoes. Well, unfortunately, that kind of mentality and lifestyle doesn't give you a wide variety of nutrients, because there's different antioxidants, different vitamins, different phytochemicals, different omegas in different foods. You need a wide range of colors in your diet. We can't be eating the same thing every day unless, you know, we're in a country or a budget that absolutely doesn't allow us to. So it doesn't have to be expensive. A plant-based diet actually is rather inexpensive. The truth is that chickpeas cost so much less than chicken, and lettuce, cucumbers, apples are still, bananas, the cheapest food on the market. If you buy your beans dry, I mean, we're talking pennies, you know, per chickpea. So it doesn't have to be expensive. It is the most cost-effective way to eat, but you do want to get a variety. So if you've got apples and oranges this week, maybe move to pineapples and blueberries next week. But the thing is, you might be thinking about, as we're talking about the Picky Eater seminar, my child just won't eat it, or my palate just won't take it. So we're going to talk about how to transform the palate, but I just wanted to really drive home that it's not okay to have too much of a simplistic diet. Now, you definitely don't want to have so many different foods in one sitting, but just, you know, over a week or a month, you want to get a good variety. That's important. And I know that we underestimate the power of water. And I don't think we realize, day to day, the privilege that we have in America to have clean water. And you might say, well, it's not very clean. It is cleaner than the majority of the world that we live in. In fact, there's regulations on our water. So it's cleaner than actually spring water. Bottled spring water doesn't have regulations. I wouldn't touch that. You almost can't pay me to drink that. I would rather drink tap water than spring water. So reverse osmosis is a great choice because then it's filtered 5 times or 3 times. Alkaline water is not necessary if your diet is alkaline. But it is important for us to drink water. And especially for children, you are not doing them a favor by letting them have juice. Juice should be a treat or a dessert, not part of a child's diet. In 1 glass of juice, so if you take just an 8-ounce cup of apple juice, there's like 3 apples in there. The problem with that is you have no fiber. Fiber regulates the sugar from the fruit into the system. Now you have no fiber, all sugar, and really, is that child ever going to eat 3 apples? Probably not. So this is where it really becomes problematic. I mean, juice is got the amount of sugar that a chocolate bar has, or a can of pop, to be real. It's just not carbonated. So water should be the drink of choice, and juice should be a treat for once in a while. That's children, but I know I'm talking to some adults too today. That's true. So you might be thinking, okay, Carolyn, I get it. My child should be having, broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and spinach, and they need to be choosing healthier grains and try to eat millet or quinoa more often. I understand that, they shouldn't be having takeout and French fries, but honestly, my child just will not eat those things. They just will not. Well, that's interesting. So if your child only likes chicken and rice, what if all the animals in the world got sick and there was only beans and vegetables and fruits to eat in the world? Would they never eat? What if there was a ban on wheat and you couldn't have any regular bread or pasta? There was only bread made from millet or buckwheat and pasta made from chickpeas. Would they never have a pasta dish? Would they never have toast or sandwich? What if asparagus was the only vegetable left in the world? I'm saying this to say that the reason why our children become picky eaters is because we give them that choice and option. If all fast food restaurants were closed and they couldn't get French fries or pizza or chicken McNuggets again, they wouldn't cry for them anymore because it wouldn't be an option. And if the only liquid left in the world to drink was water, we know they drink it. So the reason why they don't choose these things is because we let them. And we give them those options. And they know the fast food and drive-thru is open because we're going there ourselves, if we can be real. So I'm not suggesting that we become drill sergeant parents. I'm not suggesting that we don't give our children any treats and we force them into only eating these things, because that's not good either. You do not want to create food issues and bad relationships with food. But I do want to encourage our parents today that we really need to take back the onus and the power that God has given us as being keepers responsible for our children's health, because their health is ultimately in your hands. Genetics has a role to play, but you are the one that is going to give them the best start in life as far as their nutrition. You are not doing your child a favor by constantly giving into their picky eating demands, or the demands for sugar, or their demands for juice, or their demands for drive-through or takeout. You're not doing them a favor. It's a temporary happiness. that turns into major disorders like ADHD and ADD are scientifically proven from a bad diet. Yes, genetics has a small role to play, but we accelerate and exaggerate these items with the food we give our children. And so I want us to go through and understand what we can do. So first of all, there is, as Leanne will also explain, together we've come up with some tools and rules, and I'm going to unpack these in a minute, and I'll go through them briefly, but what you want to do is understand that a palate can be trained. Your tongue's a muscle. It has taste buds all over it. So when you're born, you have like 10,000 taste buds. So many taste buds. I'm sure if you haven't done it before, you might have seen it happen where you can give like, you know, an 8-month-old child a lemon and they're eating it like an orange. They have so many taste buds. They're not super heightened yet. But fast forward and give that 5-year-old a lemon and they'll like, oh, I can't have that because they've lost a lot of their taste buds. We naturally lose taste buds as we get older. A mature adult has lost about 5,000 of them. So I'm saying this to say is that you can train the palate of a child. It's not being trained because we give them too much. We're enabling them to stay in their picky eater state. And if you're a picky eater adult, you have to just become a big girl and a big boy and learn how to train your palate yourself. But what I recommend is that no matter what, when you are able to, and I say that because there might be some grandparents listening and the children are not always in their care. But if the children are always in your care, every time that there's a meal, serve something super healthy. And the rule in the house is I must try everything once. They don't have to have a full serving, but I recommend 2 full bites of whatever it is. And it's just the rule. There's no argument. There's no fight. There's no nothing. That's just the rule. So I'm going to get into some of these tools and rules, and we'll come back to these snack and lunch ideas, but I want to unpack with you just a couple more tools and rules, but understand that in order for a child to function cognitively, have the right energy, we really have to start with a healthy breakfast. And since cortisol naturally rises in the morning, the last thing you want in that child is caffeine or sugar, which actually messes with the hormone balances. And cortisol is trying to rise to get them alert and give them the energy. And if we put sugar in, a sugary cereal, some sort of a frosted anything, or a bakery item, or anything caffeinated. I know we're not giving our kids coffee, but we sure love to give them chocolate cereal loaded with sugar. Like that is a hormone imbalancing breakfast, like to the ceiling. So start with a healthy breakfast. And what I recommend for parents is that as soon as the child will come to the breakfast table, there's a big array of fruit. Like get them to load up on the fruit. And then even if they do want, you know, that waffle or that pancake or that cereal that hopefully, because you're the one that's buying the cereal and not them, we've chosen one that's not too high in sugar. But even if it does have some sugar in it, get them to load up on some antioxidant-rich fruit. That way their stomach's a little full, they get the fiber in them, there's water in them. And by the way, whether you put it in their bathroom or as soon as they get downstairs, they must drink some water, even a half a cup before they start eating. So, but make sure that the child does have a breakfast. Now, there are some kids that don't tolerate breakfast well. They say their stomach's upset. I notice this happens for a lot of kids that eat dinner late or snack late on food. They don't feel like eating in the morning. So I'm going to help you with that in a moment. But this healthy breakfast option is really important. And because our schools are mostly nut-free, and if they're not allergic to nuts, try to get them to have some almonds or walnuts with their breakfast. The omegas in there, the essential fatty acids and the proteins will last them long throughout the day. And this, of course, I'm talking towards children, but this doesn't change. Breakfast is my biggest meal of the day. You have got to have a healthy breakfast. That's when your metabolism's the fastest. That's when cortisol, your metabolism, not the fastest, metabolism starts rising in the morning. That's when you're burning most of your energy. Cortisol starts rising. It needs protein, it needs nutrients. So it's very important that morning we flush with water and we jump into a healthy breakfast. Now, kids are tough at lunchtime because some kids, they're like champions. They don't care their friends are talking. They want to eat. They love food. So they're going to eat. And then you have other kids that they'll bring home their lunch every single time because they were talking through it or didn't feel like eating. Lunch is hard to control for young people. If they're going to eat, it's great to give them some good options. If they're not, just make sure there's something in their lunch that is somewhat healthy so that if they do get hungry, they have something to grab. And I'll talk about where you can load up on the nutrients in a minute. But I have found, because we worked, myself and my sister, with the Toronto District School Board and helping parents plan their lunches. So I have found that hummus and vegetable sticks go over really well. I like to do less wheat as possible. So I do try to encourage parents to go with a sprouted organic grain bread or a gluten-free bread or gluten-free crackers if possible, because our wheat's so genetically modified, it's creating a lot of issues even for our children. But I recommend that, you could do some rice crackers or regular crackers with the hummus. Bean salads are great. You'd be surprised how many kids that are picky eaters actually enjoy chickpea salads. So bean salads are wonderful. And the reason why I like the bean salads is because you could add grains in there like quinoa or a gluten-free pasta or even a regular pasta. You could add even some rice in there or millet, like they wouldn't even know. You throw some cherry tomatoes in there, which most kids like, cucumbers, and you put a nice healthy lemon juice olive oil dressing with a bit of maple syrup and some sea salt, and it keeps well. And you can eat that warm or you can eat it cool. So bean salads are a real favorite of mine to give to kids. Salsa and chips. I mean, I know that chips aren't the healthiest thing. You could get a non-GMO corn chip. It's still deep fried. It's not great, but they like salsa. They'd be getting it. Avocado, guacamole. If there's some good lime juice in there, it shouldn't go bad. That doesn't look like a healthy sandwich, but in my home it was, because we'd have gluten-free bread with vegan cheese. And so we would make our sandwiches that way. But whatever you're doing, just try to make it more on the healthy side. Hummus wraps. Again, I'm always promoting more of a plant-based lifestyle. But, even honestly, even like a little container of chickpeas, especially for your younger ones, they love to just pick up those chickpeas. They're soft, easy to eat. It becomes finger food, healthy finger food. And you know what? Just getting a thermos and putting leftover dinners, many kids love that. We would also, for the kids, do make your own pizzas, build your own sandwiches, make them, you might not love that idea because now they're using their fingers in their food, but they love that idea. You put your tomatoes in there, you put your lettuce here, you put your sandwich meat or your hummus spread or your vegan meat or chickpea spread or whatever here. And then you have the bread. They're like, putting it together. They feel like they work at some sort of a sub place. And subs are great too. Kids love that. Make your own subs. You can have olives and other toppings, but some kids like that. Some kids don't. Just You've got to find out what makes your child happy. Some love salads, some would rather you just cut up the vegetables, some don't want to give you any. The last thing you want to do is take expensive, and everything's expensive. So take expensive, healthy food items and put it in their lunch bag, and they throw it in the garbage, or it comes back and cannot be reused. So don't throw these things in there hoping they're going to eat it. Leanne will talk to you next week a lot more about getting kids to be more involved in choosing what's their lunch and breakfast going to look like, but talk about it with them. Make sure you've tried it at home before you put it in their lunch bag. And feel free, if you have any questions, to just throw it in the chat. So this is a big thing, and it's not possible for all families, but I highly recommend that when kids come home from school, we're not giving them snack, we're giving them dinner. The problem with giving them snack is that most kids are not eating the full lunch or have had an active day, which is great. They come home, maybe they play outside for a bit or whatever, but they're hungry when they get home. Can I tell you something? It's very difficult to feed healthy foods to a child that's not hungry. And when they're snacking all day, and we're constantly giving the kids snack, 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 and now you want them to sit down and eat this spinach and chickpea stew, good luck with that, not happening. But a hungry child will eat almost anything. They might not finish the whole plate, but they will eat it to the point of satiation until they're satisfied. So I highly recommend that you make that black bean chili, you make that gluten-free pasta, you make that chickpea stew. And when they come home from school with their ravenous, hungry appetite, they're having dinner. And that way, later on in the evening, if they're hungry, then they can have a snack. Then you can pull out the crackers, or you can, pull out the popcorn, or make them a smoothie, give them some fruits and almonds. In the early evening, that's when you can add the snack into their diet. Now, again, it's not always possible. Some kids do after school care, but just try to avoid the snacking when the child gets home. When they're hungry, make sure they're hungry and give them food. This is when a child eats best and it digests well. So let's just go through some of these actual tools that will allow or make that kid, without the fight, actually eat their chickpeas and their spinach and all of these things we're asking them to. So pair likes with dislikes is one of my favorite ways. And I think we do this without even thinking, but I put a label on it. So you've made, you're so excited about, feeding your family healthy food. So you've made this wonderful chickpea and spinach stew with, a curry sauce, and you put potatoes in there and broccoli, and you're just like, I can see the potassium and the protein and all the iron and the calcium. I can't wait for my child to eat this. And they're just like, I'm not eating this, right? So that's the worst thing you can do. But if you know the child loves French fries, then make some French fries. If you're making like a gluten-free pasta dish and you're not sure your family is going to love this gluten-free pasta, make some garlic bread with it. So pairing likes with dislikes, and here's how it goes. It's not just like, oh, I made the chickpea stew and the French fries. They fill up on the French fries and forget about the stew. No, that's not how it goes. They get the chickpea stew, and the French fries are just an arm's reach, okay? So as soon as you have like 2 or 3 bites of your stew, I'm gonna give you some French fries. Okay, they don't want the stew. Okay, no problem. Come back later when you're hungry. I'm hungry. Okay, just eat the stew and then you can have the French fries. No problem. I'm gonna give these French fries to you. Look, they're so close. Just have 3 bites of your stew. So that's pretty much what you do. There's no fight. If they don't want to eat it, just tell them to go play. Make them come back when they're hungry. They will eat 3 bites of the stew. What you're doing here is, I'd call it magic, but I don't believe in magic, but it's transformational. Number 1, you're in charge, not them. That's beautiful. They love that. Believe it or not, it makes them feel safe. You're sticking to rules. You're being consistent. They know they can't break you. You can come back 100 times. You're not going to have one French fry until you eat the stew. It's not made of dirt. There's no bugs in it. It's healthy and it doesn't taste like garbage. You're going to have 3 bites. The other thing you're doing, besides the onus and ownership that you have as a parent, and letting them know that this is not a fight. I'm doing my job as a parent and I care about you. I love you. You need those chickpeas. You need that spinach to grow strong and healthy. But the other thing you're doing is that with every bite of that stew, you're training their palate. And so they've had a few bites of the stew. Their mouth is probably going wild because they have like so many taste buds. Then they have a few French fries. Good job. I want more French fries because you only gave them like, 3. No problem. Have 2 more bites of your stew. And so now when they take 2 more bites of the stew, it's not like this crazy flavor. They're growing accustomed to it even in one sitting. That's so great. Look, you can have 4 French fries. Take 2 more bites of your stew. And they will catch on. So whether that's a gluten-free pasta dish and the garlic bread, you're not giving them that whole loaf. You are cutting a small piece of their favorite garlic bread. You're going to make, like a cauliflower roast. You put them some chicken nuggets on the side if that's what they need. So pair the likes with dislikes, but don't give it all. Just give them small batches of it after they have eaten their meal. And the final thing that does is even with 3 bites, they're such small people, you give them so many nutrients. And you feel good about yourself. And they will feel good without even realizing it. They'll be calmer, they'll be more relaxed, they're not loaded up on starches that turn to sugar. And you're like, wow, look, we did it. Before you know it, next week when you serve that chickpea stew, they'll be asking for it. Might not happen that immediately, but I'm telling you, I've just have my own children, grandchildren, and I've been working with kids and picky eaters for a very long time. They are picky eaters because we let them be. So the other thing that's important is food education. Very important. You've got to help our young people know and understand why do they need to eat their spinach. I make a lot of sprouts in my house, and my grandchildren, I make them eat the sprouts. My kids used to love it, but I find my grandchildren aren't so fond of sprouts. But I'm like, do you know these sprouts have so much muscle power? Like they make you strong. And it's true, they really do. But I just put 3 sprouts on their dish because 3 sprouts for a little child, that's actually a lot of protein. And they're just look, grandma, strong. And it's amazing. They hate them, but they eat them because they're just like, they want the muscle power because we've let them know it helps their muscles. Let them know that when they eat the carrots and sweet potatoes, it helps with their eyes. Like, just give them this little bit of education so that they recognize that it can't always be their favorite, but there's certain things you kind of have to do for their health. Let them know that there's like, the only way that we can pee properly or poo properly is if we drink lots of water, right? So this kind of education is very important. You don't have to be a nutritionist to know this information. I love this tool. Take your kids shopping. I know we don't love to get all the kids in the cart and take them with us to the grocery store, and you can do this for yourself as well, is that I would love to take my kids to the grocery store and just go through the produce aisle and choose a fruit or a vegetable that we haven't made before. They get so excited. They bring back this like celery root that you don't even know how to make yourself, but it's quite exciting because together you guys can go on the internet or look in cookbooks and figure out how to make it. Even if they don't like it, they're going to eat it because they were part of the process. And so even for yourself, we're so used to going to the same foods in the same aisles. Spend most of your time in the produce aisle. That's where your cart should be full. And also, make a rule with your child that there's only going to be one treat item in the cart. We're not buying juice. We're having water. So you got to make some ground rules around it. Make a grocery list. Before you go to the grocery store, decide by yourself or with your family, what meals are we making for the week? What's going to be, breakfast, lunch, dinner, what meals, but mostly the dinners. What's the main courses we're making for the week? What do we want to have for our lunch items and breakfast items? That way you're going to the grocery store just for those items. And make those plans. And if you can, we would always make, Wednesday was make dinner yourself, like do it yourself night. And that worked really well because if the kid wanted to have French fries and nuggets, they could do it. If they wanted cereal, they could do it. Or I encourage them to pick a recipe and just cook something yourself. And, even at 5, 6 years old, we would help them in the kitchen to do that. So make it yourself kind of takes the pressure off you to have a dinner every night prepared. And it gives the kids a freedom to have whatever they want that evening. You've got to put some parameters around it, of course. They're not going to have a chocolate bar for dinner. But take your kids shopping and get them involved in the process. When it comes to treats, desserts need to be limited. Sugar robs the body of iron. It causes inflammation. It accelerates acne. It's a drug. Honestly, sugar is a drug. So try to put parameters around that. Incorporate treat days. So, maybe it is going to be dessert day every Friday and Tuesday. Maybe you have 3 out of 4 days a week, but it can't be every day and it can't be whenever they want. And here's a little trick. If it is a dessert day, make sure you've made that casserole dish or that stew that's super healthy that you wanted to try that you didn't think anybody would like, because nobody's actually going to get dessert unless they have some of your stew. So, and desserts don't always have to be garbage. I mean, you can, we would make island ice cream in our house where we would just blend frozen pineapple with mango, a little bit of coconut milk, and blend that in our Vitamix. It would turn into a most delicious pineapple ice cream that there was no sugar. We'd put a little squeeze of lime juice, we'd toast some coconut on the stove, and it was like, yay, we're having ice cream. And I'm like, yay, we're not having refined sugar. So there's lots of different ways to, dessert days, treat days don't always have to be something unhealthy. And maybe that's when they're getting a half a glass of juice. That should be limited to a dessert. So the reason why I like this next tool of good manners is because it gives you back the onus of being a parent and having that final call. So the rule was, as we talked in the beginning, you're going to try everything once. Whether you love that casserole dish, whether you want that broccoli or asparagus I cooked, doesn't matter. There's something on the table that I know you like because we're pairing likes with dislikes. So having good manners is very important. And what I mean by this is that the biggest thing I want you to take away from as far as the manners list is to always ask to be excused from the table. And the reason why that is so important is, number one, we've lost some of these age-old mannerisms. And if a child is finished eating and they say, thank you, Mom, thank you, Dad, for dinner, may I please be excused? That gives me the opportunity to say, oh, Sammy, I don't think you tried the asparagus yet. Or did you have any of the bean salad I made? Oh, no, I forgot. Okay, no problem. You can be excused as soon as you try that. But if a child is just done eating, they get up from the table, they go jump to their homework or go run outside and play, and you pick up their plate and you're like, oh, we didn't follow the rule. He didn't have the asparagus. I was trying to train his palate and it didn't work today. You're not going to call Sammy back from his bike ride to come and have the asparagus, you're going to try to do better the next day. But by having this asking to be excused from the table, number one, it teaches kids to be grateful. Like, that food didn't get on your plate with no sweat off my back. It took some time and effort to put it there. So just being grateful and appreciating the person who's made your food. It's good manners, so it helps them to respect their elders and just be more appreciative. But like I said, it gives you that final say so that they're not running away from the table. We are going to take a pause moment here and just make sure that I'm holding you accountable for the rules that we discussed, that you will try everything once. Okay, so that's one of the good manners that I would let that I share. And although water is great, try to avoid them from drinking water at their meals, because number one, it fills them up unnecessarily. Number two, it dilutes their enzymes, so they don't digest well. And this should be for adults alike. So water is great, but like I said, as soon as they wake up, try to get them to drink water as soon as they wake up. So when they come to the table, they don't need to have the water. You know, try to get them to drink some water as soon as they come home, so that while you're warming up the dinner, then they don't need water with their meals. If possible, let them to try to wait 1 hour after they eat before they start drinking water. So family, that's that. I don't know if you have any questions, but this I'm going to introduce to you in a minute, Leanna Quanake, because next week she's actually going to take you through another set of tools and rules that actually changed my life, changed my sanity level in a good way. And you know, it actually, when I look at my children today who are young adults, I can see that they're still living these principles of health, which is so beautiful, and still using some of those checklists and tools that they were taught. But if you have any questions about anything that I have mentioned, you can get in touch with us. If you're not following us on Instagram, it's The Energy Shack Juice Bar. I'd love for you to follow us because we give lots of health tips. We just did one on pink eye. There's tons of health tips about picky eaters in our seminars. So definitely follow us on Instagram. You can also email me directly if you have any questions. But also, if you are struggling with any health issue and you would like to book a consultation with me or with your family, one-person consultation is $49. If you need a family rate, just get in touch with me. And if you would like to order a detox to get your system cleaned up as an adult so that you can start into healthy eating, you can do 10 off detox as your coupon code and get 10% off your detox. So I'll just leave those up there. And with that being said, does anybody have any questions before I just introduce Leanne, who will just tell you a little bit about herself and what next week's seminar look like? I know not everybody listening today, definitely our crowd of people are not our audience isn't necessarily an audience that has adults with a lot of young children, but I know you know young children in your life. So was there any questions at all? You can put it in the chat, or you can just take your mute off if you have any questions.